Hello, everyone. I am Kara, founder of Equine Bodywork Online and Ground Pole Workouts.
And I'm Chelsea, an equine behavior specialist.
And we are in the Tack Room with Kara and Chelsea. In the Tack Room episodes, we will be answering all of your questions on equine anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, and equine behavior. So if you have any questions for future episodes, make sure to drop them in the comments below. All right, Chelsea, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I hear you have some questions
Good.
for me.
I have a whole bunch of questions for you. I am
Awesome.
going to start with one that may seem like it's a tad bit controversial. I don't know. So I'm going to fire it off and then you answer it to the best of your ability.
All right, here we go. Rapid fire.
All right. So we're going to get kind of deep for the first one. So as a body worker, when you go in for a client horse that has been cleared by a veterinarian for work and has been cleared for pain, essentially. But you can tell by both a trained eye and the trained hands that you use to actually touch and feel what's going on with the horse, that there is still some pain or discomfort. How do you typically handle that moving forward, either with the owner or even working together with the vet?
So if I am meeting a horse for the first time, the vet has cleared it as being pain-free or nothing exactly wrong that the vet could see or feel or diagnose. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are pain-free. That just means that the vet was unable to diagnose something. Now, some vets might go further and say, well, we need a bone scan or we need an MRI. Others might say, oh, well, he flexed fine. So let's just call it good. So in a way, just because the vet says he's fine, doesn't necessarily mean he's absolutely pain-free. It just means there's nothing that the vet could find in whatever diagnostics that they ran that is causing the pain. Most vets that I know will go further and try, as long as the owner wants to try more, the vet will try more. So let's say the vet's like, oh, I'm not finding anything that's causing this. What I do in my job is to see what I can palpate, where I can find it, and look at the horse as a whole and see how the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments are interacting with each other and with the nerves and the joints, and work from one layer and to the next, to the next, to the next. Now, how to handle that with an owner or a vet that doesn't think there's pain or doesn't believe that there's an issue is a little tricky. Sometimes there's not much that you can do. You can't change someone's mind if they're kind of stuck on, well, this other professional told me or the vet told me that it's fine. So sometimes there's just okay, I'm going to come in and do the best that I can for the horse, and hopefully that's going to give them some relief. Other times I might ask if I can talk to the vet and tell them what I'm seeing. Most of the time, vets are really open to it. And I've had, at least in our area, we've had wonderful vets that have wanted to talk and say, well, I'm not seeing anything here, but what are you feeling? So when you have that collaboration, that's fantastic. The other thing I do is I might want to look at the feet and look at the farrier and say hey, what are you seeing? What's going on in the feet? No hoof, no horse, right? So maybe everything else is fine, but something's happening in the feet. And then if everything is okay in the feet, we're going to go to the saddle fit. So there's so many different aspects of holistic horse care that sometimes the vets just don't quite know all of what's going on in the horse because they're not with the horse all the time. I'm lucky enough that with the horses that I work on, I see them at least once a month, maybe more. And so I get at least 12 times per year to put my hands on those horses and to really see what's going on. But a vet only comes out when there's something wrong, or maybe that once a year, pre-competition vet check.
Yeah.
Um, so the best option is if you have other professionals that are willing, like vets and farriers, saddle fitters that are willing to all collaborate. If not, you
Mhm.
kind of just have to do your best with like talking to the owner and saying like maybe you want a second opinion, maybe you want to go for more diagnostics, maybe like there's just a little bit of like massaging the way that you speak to be able to get the owner to go, oh, maybe there is still some pain in here. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that's kind of my approach to it.
It is. I feel like that's such a good and thorough answer. I feel like so many horse owners struggle with that. They get a diagnosis and then they kind of don't know where to go from there because so many of them, they spend every day with the horse and they just kind of feel in their gut that something isn't right.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it's just really cool to have, I think, a body worker or someone like you that can you're kind of like on their team and advocating. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's things too that um like we get to see also the behavior changes as you do too when you're
Yes.
working with horses where a vet
Hmm.
might come in and be like, "Oh, well, I see this horse once a year or twice a year, but I don't really know that when they're, biting the rope consistently, that kind of means that they're a little off today. Like there's something going on because they don't usually do that."
Yeah.
Um, so talking about like equine behavior, you can really see what's going on in your horse's mind and
Yeah.
body a lot of times by just the behavior that they're displaying and if they've changed. So yeah, so that's another thing to like pay attention to and to see if they're responding differently to their body worker that month or that session, there might be something there too.
All right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. That was a
Yeah.
good answer. I have another one.
Yeah. Tell me.
Another
Hit me.
question that is perhaps not as deep as that one,
Okay.
but I
Hit me.
but I think super important for people to understand. So, in your words, what exactly is equine bodywork? And how do you think that it differs from more traditional veterinary care or training?
So equine bodywork is any modality that is um, working with the body of the horse to improve their performance, release their tension. Um, it's not diagnostics. So if you have a body worker that is diagnosing something, that is inappropriate and with not within their scope of work. So oftentimes I'll get someone that calls and says, I just want to make sure that like my horse seems off. I want to see what it is. If I get that call, I'm going to
Uh,
tell them, you need to go to the vet because that is vet work. And we are not supposed to be diagnosing anything. Um, However, we are here to work with the tissue, with the joints, with the bones, with the nerves in order to improve that horse's um, function.
mhm,
And a lot of times, horses go into these compensation patterns due to their training, the way that they move, their conformation, um, age, the way that they interact with their friends in the field, um, the way that
yeah.
they're shod, maybe. And their body tends to go into a pattern that they are not using their body in the way that they could for optimal function. So, to be as comfortable as possible, to perform as well as possible, to carry the rider with as much ease as possible. And that is our job to go in there and to help the body come back into balance, release those tension patterns to allow the
Mm.
horse to be at its most comfortable and optimal state.
Do you find that a lot of people will kind of look to you for a diagnosis even after a session?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and I often will tell them it's a tricky thing for a body worker because you're called in sometimes with the idea that like, oh, I can have the body worker come fix the issue and maintain the issue, or I can have them tell me what they feel, but I can tell the person what I feel and what I might
Uh-huh.
suggest to the vet, to where to look, but I can't say for sure your horse has kissing spines. I can say,
Right.
you know, the back is reacting in a way where I have seen other backs react when they've had kissing spines. It could be
Sure.
that. It could be that the saddle doesn't fit. It could be that the horse rolled in the pasture and tweaked something, So I have to address it in a way of like, I am seeing some issues in the back present. I'm seeing spasms. I'm seeing sensitivity, but I can't tell you why this is happening. So you'll need to talk to your vet
Yeah.
about why this is happening. So yeah,
Right.
yeah. It is tricky
That
though, because
makes
I think sometimes people they actually have more of a relationship with their body worker because they see them more often. And so
Yep.
they're like, "Oh, it's just easier for them to call the body worker," you know? And and
Yeah.
sometimes the vet will tell them to call the body worker. I've had many times when a vet actually gets called out and then just is like, "Oh, this is muscle tension. You just need to call the body worker."
Yeah.
And I think that's great, that we can collaborate like that. We can step in when needed, and our goal as body workers is to maintain the horse well enough that when it does roll, it doesn't tweak something, or when it does move under saddle, its muscles are in balance enough that they can carry the rider. So the hope is
Sure.
that with those bodywork sessions, you won't have to call the vet as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. So, which which areas, since we're talking about tension,
Yeah.
which areas of the horse's body tend to hold the most tension in your experience?
It's very discipline specific, but
Yeah.
I will say that I see a lot of tension in the head and pole, and I think that's because horses, not only is there's a lot of pressure on the head and pole often, the way that we lead horses, the way that the bridle rests, the way like some disciplines want their horses' heads to be carried. There's just a lot going on in the head and pole, but also that's a little bit of the emotional center as well. So when horses are upset or they're having pain somewhere else, it will radiate into the head and pole too. So that's
Yeah.
one area that across the board in disciplines I find is pretty tense. Um, Another area, the brachiocephalicus in the neck. So that long neck muscle that runs just from the pole down into the shoulder. It's the lower portion of the neck. And then if you think of a draft horse that has like this big drafty neck, that
Yeah.
muscle is usually really, really developed. And so that is a muscle that actually it's a fantastic muscle. It brings the shoulder forward. So when
Yep.
the limb is in extension, it's helping with that. It also works in neck movement, and so it has a lot of jobs, the brachiocephalicus, but it can be extremely tight and overdeveloped in horses that are not pushing with the hind end and are using
Yeah.
that muscle to propel themselves instead of using their hind end to propel themselves. So that muscle, um, I often see tight across the disciplines as well. And then my other go-to is like the glutes and the hamstrings. And I
Yeah.
I don't think that they're chronically tight in all disciplines, the glutes and the hamstrings, but I do feel that no matter what discipline, when I work on the glutes and hamstrings, the horses just melt, and then the owners tend to say, "Oh, my
Yep.
next ride was, like, absolutely amazing." So,
Yeah.
I know that, the horses really dig the glutes and hamstrings.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, whenever I would say 97% of the time when there's a lesson horse that I see that has a behavioral issue, something's come up, they're refusing to go forward, they're shaking their head a lot, they're just overall miserable. It's always something in the head. I'm always like, get a
There's
body
a
worker
lot.
out here because
There's a lot.
they do, and they're teaching people. So they
Yeah.
constantly have that they're constantly teaching people who are using the reins to balance to begin with. And so that
Right.
causes a lot of issue
Right.
through there. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and then
good. That's good to
they'll
know.
also, like, a lot of horses, when they start to feel tight somewhere or a little bit of pain somewhere, they'll tend to clench their jaw, and then you've got, like, the TMJ in the head going on, and if anyone has had TMJ issues, like, you know how much that hurts, and so then
Hurts.
that kind of radiates into the head. I feel like I could do hour-long sessions on only the head and pole and still be like,
Yeah.
"Let's keep going in here." So, um,
Yes.
for all of you at home, like, learning to work on your horse's head and pole, if you don't learn anything else, learning to work on the horse's head and pole, I think is gonna make an amazing amount of difference in your horse.
Yeah, it really does. And they also they'll melt into it. Do you have any suggestions? Because I've come across horses, and I'm sure you have too, who don't even want you to touch their pole at first. They're
Yeah.
like, nope, don't touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I this might sound crazy, but,
Okay.
there is a modality called cranial sacral, and if you can't touch the head, you go to the sacrum. So I will go to the pelvis or just behind the pelvis into the glutes and do a whole session on the glutes and the pelvis. And then go and see once your horse is kind of in a quieter state too. Um, Go and see if they'll let you even just passive touch. Like, no, what I found too is a lot of times any sort of movement is a little bit hard on them. So if you can even just like hold your hand after a session on the glutes, then just go and hold your hand somewhere close to the pole and don't do anything. It's really tempting to like put your hand there and be like, oh, the horse is letting me
Those-
do this. Now I have to move my hand and do something. Don't do it. Just like stay
Right.
there, hang out, and you're
Yeah.
creating warmth under there. You're releasing tissue tension. So you don't have to do much. I think a lot of people think like, oh, if my hands aren't moving and my hands aren't um, creating some sort of pressure, then I'm not affecting anything. But that's not true.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's one of the main things that Equine Bodywork Online taught me is that anytime that I would touch my horse, I was usually doing too much pressure, too much
Hmm.
movement,
Hmm.
too much action, even my breathing. Like it really did. It changed the way that I touch my horse just in general.
Yeah.
Um, a lot more intention behind it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot more focusing on your breath too. And like,
Yes.
I think a lot of times when I'm teaching in person, I'll see people or hear people say, like, oh, why isn't he relaxing? Why isn't he yawning? Why isn't he sighing yet? Like, who cares? Don't put your desire to see outwardly attention release onto this horse. Like, that's putting pressure onto them. And without even knowing it, we're like, "Oh,
Yep.
they have to release tension." Just like, no, it is what it is. What you're doing with your hands is allowing them to release tension. That horse might be unable to show it at the moment, and that's okay. And
Right.
so, yeah, a lot of like taking away the pressure of like, I need to do something to my horse's body. Just like leave that at the tack room door.
That's
My dog
right.
wants
Yeah,
in.
there's so much oh, that's okay. There's so much expectation in all of it, whether it's in everything we do with them. We always go into it just like this
Yeah.
needs to happen. And it's
Yeah.
no, let it go. Leave it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
So, what is one myth or misconception about equine bodywork that you'd love to clear up?
So, yeah, I think one of the main misconceptions is actually what we were just talking about, but it's like you don't have to do a lot in order to make a big change. And I think that people think, oh, I need to do a lot of deep pressure work in order to get deep tissue change. That's not
Hmm.
true. Like you're just working deep tissue just means that you're working on the muscle layers and the soft tissue layers that are below another layer of muscle or soft tissue. Like that's what deep tissue is basically. That doesn't mean deep pressure. And so that's something that I have to really tell people when I see them working on their horses and they haven't been instructed properly or they're not members of Equine Bodywork Online or they haven't like they think they're doing something right by going in really heavy and strong, and they're always very surprised that it's a lot lighter
Yeah.
than they thought. Um, Another misconception is that you're going to call your body worker out and in one session they're going to change everything. Sometimes that happens and
Yep.
you notice a huge difference, but often it is like peeling layers off of an onion, and you might only get that one layer off that first session. So don't be disappointed if like one session doesn't completely fix your horse and they're now a unicorn. Um, and that's not because we don't want it to. Of course, we would love to be able to come out and just like wave our magic wand and have it happen, but there's a lot of there's a lot of years of tension pattern a lot of times that need to be undone. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So expanding on that a little bit, because that's one of my favorite analogies that you use is the onion. So for the people at home, for the people watching, can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that? And also, what can they do in between professional bodywork sessions
ah,
to kind of keep it going?
all right. So I I like to talk about a horse's body as an onion. So like imagine your horse is this unpeeled onion, and then the body worker comes and they're trying to peel away layers and layers of tension. So when we talk about like a tension pattern, I saw this really neat post the other day on social media. It was a thermal camera and it was
Okay.
showing that there was an injury in the horse's I'm gonna guess it was like the right stifle. And that thermal camera, so that was a known injury. It had been diagnosed by a vet. And that thermal camera was showing when that happened, there was just heat in the stifle. But then
Okay.
2 weeks later, there's now heat in the stifle, and there's also heat running up and down the opposite hind leg. And there's also
Oof.
heat running through the back and into the opposite shoulder. So those are when we say tension patterns, those are what we're talking about. Like it doesn't have to stem from an injury. It could just be that the horse is maybe a little uneven under saddle, but years and years and years of moving that way has caused them to compensate in that in you know maybe they're so much tighter now on one side than the other. And we
Yeah.
can't, as a body worker, go in. Sometimes we can and immediately say, I think this is stemming from here. But sometimes we can't. So we start and we unpeel that layer. And then, since we don't have 8 hours to work on your horse in a day,
Yeah.
we get to a certain point, the session is done. We feel that we've done a good job in our first session of releasing tension. But then the horse
Yeah.
goes back into movement, and 3, 4 days later, they're starting to move the way that they used to move. And then that
Yeah.
layer kinda gets put back in place on that onion. So now
Yeah.
we come again a month later, and we have to start over again and unpeel that first layer again. And so as a body worker, what I would love is if all of my clients knew how to keep that layer, that one layer that we have unraveled or peeled to a certain standard where I can come the next month and I don't have to spend my entire time redoing that.
Yeah.
And then I get to the next layer and then they can keep that, at a certain standard. And then I can come and then eventually we're at a horse that is moving properly, that is comfortable, that is um now we're just able to maintain that versus having to fix it.
Yeah.
So how you can do that?
Yeah.
Equine Bodywork Online is a great way. So we
It's a great
teach
place
you
to
all the
start.
things you need to know in order to release tension in your horse. We also have a great Facebook group where you can ask any questions. I'm answering questions there all the time. You can reach out to me. Happy to help you with your individual horse's needs. So yeah, check out Equine Bodywork Online if you haven't already.
It really is the best. And I'm not saying that.
Oh,
It's
thank
changed
you.
lives for many of the horses. So, a lot of the thing in the barns that I go to, especially, and I'm sure you see the same thing, when I suggest body work, there's some owners who are very, they're really into it, and there's some owners who are like, "That's ridiculous." And one of the arguments that I hear often is that it's something that is reserved for, like, performance horses and sport horses and horses who have more of a job, and people don't really wanna spend the time on most often, I'll see it from people like lesson horses,
Mm,
and horses who are retired and just kind of turned out. And
mhm.
so can you give just like a peek into how important it is for every horse to have body work, at least every 6 weeks, would you recommend 6 to 8 weeks?
Um, I would say I recommend once a month actually, but every 6 weeks, if that's like that's fine. And it depends on the modality too. If you're doing chiropractic, you're probably gonna do 6 weeks. If you're doing massage, you might wanna do once a
Okay.
month. Um,
Mhm.
so why it's useful for every horse? Um, because there is no perfect horse that's either in work or has been in work, and is now retired. There's just no perfect horse that is like, I feel fine all the time. And then
Yeah.
when you don't feel fine all the time, we as humans, we can kind of figure out how to fix ourselves a little bit. We either go to our body worker or we're like, hey,
Yeah.
partner, can you rub this knot out? Or, you know,
Right. Yes.
um, they can't do that. Like, the best they can do is if their hamstrings are ouchy, they'll kinda, like, sit on a wall and rub back and forth, and someone will be like, "Oh, their tail itches." Well, maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's their hamstrings, you know? So,
Yeah.
maybe it's their hocks, and they're trying to release tension on the hamstrings to get their hocks to feel better. So,
Yeah.
lesson horses, I think, are, like, actually some of the ones that need it the most. No, they don't go out and jump 3-6, but well, maybe they do, but most of them are teaching people how to ride that don't have balanced seats, that are hanging on the reins, that are doing a lot to make the horse have to compensate for the rider. Um,
Mhm.
and because of that, I think if you want your lesson horse to last and have that useful life go longer and longer, it is pretty imperative that they get maintenance and not just an injection in their joints. That injections, they make the pain go away for a while, but they can just be band-aids too. The issues are still there. So, I definitely would say if you have lesson horses and you want to maintain their useful life and extend their useful life, like, body work is a huge thing for them.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
Retired horses, my hope is that all retired horses are out in the field and able to move the way that they wanna move and able to, do what they wanna do for the rest of their life, but they still have joint pain, they still have arthritis, they still have maybe, needing some help with their circulation as we as humans do when we get older. The same issues
Yeah.
happen with horses. So they've been most likely used in the past and have caught, some issues from that. Have like some body problems have arisen from their past life. So um yeah, retired horses, I think especially with, like, just getting circulation into their limbs and into their joints, it's huge. It's huge to
Yeah.
help them feel better and be comfortable as they age.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Lesson horses especially. I always like to say we can ride them, but that's not really what they were built for. So it's so important to just
Mhm,
maintain every part of the body,
mhm.
especially if
Yeah,
they contribute to your income. You know?
absolutely. And I sometimes
No-brainer.
I'll be in a barn and someone will say like, "Oh," they'll say the horse is Jimmy. "Oh, Jimmy, you're getting massage and I don't even get massage." And I want to say, well, do you give piggyback rides like 2 hours a day for 5 days a week?
Oh,
Because if you
I know.
do, you should definitely get a massage. Like, that's ouchy. Now, they're
It
built a little bit
is.
better than we are to do piggyback rides, but at the same time, exactly like you said, they're not meant to do this. They're not, their
Yeah.
body wasn't built for this. This is what we have
Right.
decided that they will do for us. And, you
Yeah.
know, bless them that they do it. And let's help them a little bit along the way as they have their job and after they're done with their job. All right, everyone, that concludes our very first episode of In the Tack Room with Kara and Chelsea.
Mhm.
If you have anything you want us to talk about, any questions, anything you'd like to see us address in our future episodes, make sure to comment down below, and we will see you next time on In the Tack Room.